Hi guys, it's Jordan from P&P Campers. Just going to do you a handover video. It's a Autosleeper Trophy, and obviously based on the VW T4. So under the bonnet, over here on the left hand side, we've got the air filter inside this box, obviously attached there to the inlet at the top there. Got your washer fluid just here, power steering fluid just next door to that, brake fluid attached to the servo just there at the top of the engine. See, nice clean colour. The brake fluid, engine oil goes in through this cap, and same again, no sort of creaminess there, so there's no water inside the engine at all or anything like that. So engine oil in there, and your engine oil dipstick is this one just here with the yellow top. Engine coolant is this one just here, and you can see there it's cold at the moment, and the line just there at the maximum line, so perfect sort of level there. Looks like it had a full service sort of top to bottom in 2018. So you've got brake fluid, cam belt, water pump and antifreeze. So you've got all of that sort of stuff has been done in the last couple of years. Obviously we've had our full service on it anyway, but yeah, so this one's been completely done very recently. Engine battery down here on the right hand side, just underneath this sort of little I think this for the air inside, so like the cabin filter I believe, so that's all just there. The diesel fuel goes in here, so that little cap comes off. You need your ignition key to go in there to open that up. And your bonnet release is just inside here, inside the passenger door. I'll get around to the inside in just a minute, but I'll go around the outside completely first. Two vents just here are for your fridge. So if you've got the fridge lit up on gas, you can sometimes feel a little bit of warm air coming out through this top right hand side. Or in fact, ignore that, it'll be coming out through here. So a lot of the fridges are here, but this one's on here. So if you've got the fridge lit up on gas, so at the moment I do, and I can feel a little bit of warm air coming out just through here on the right hand side of that vent. Toilet cassette locker is this one just down here at the very back of the vehicle. All you really need to know is that to take it out, push down on this and then pull it out towards you. Once you've got that out, you then open it and empty from here. And when you are emptying, you need to hold down on the little yellow button just there. The reason there's not really much else to know is because you've got a freshwater flush, so you don't have any flush fluid to worry about. So as long as you've got a little bit of water in your freshwater tank, you can flush your toilet. Just make sure. Okay, so you've got a wastewater drain just over there. I'll just make sure I haven't missed anything out. No, so wastewater drain just down here. And I can see the fresh one is just up there underneath the boiler vent. Hookup point is this one just here, so if you needed a hookup plugged in order to put your charger on or activate any sort of 240 volt sockets and things like that, that's where you put your hookup in. Freshwater inlet is this one just here, so please don't get that mixed up with the diesel. The diesel's at the front, water's at the back. So that's your fresh water. Boiler. So I've got this lit up on gas at the moment as well, and I can feel a really nice amount of hot air coming out through the top of that, and you can actually see a little bit of condensation forming above there as well, which is totally normal. And in the cab, it's nice and simple in the cab. Got a 5-speed manual gearbox. To select reverse, which is over the top left, you need to push down on the gear stick to get there. All of your heater controls are just there in the middle, underneath the singled in head unit just there. It's a JVC. It's got a CD player and radio. I'm not sure if it's got anything else or not. Hazard lights just here, and your heated rear window won't work because the original heated rear window isn't there anymore. Your OBD reader is just behind this little bit of plastic just here. If you can see that on the video, if you ever needed to get there for any reason. You have got this kind of, I think it's kind of like a choke here, but you don't actually need it. I think that's probably more to do with the petrol vehicles, but this one's obviously diesel, so just wait for your glow plug light to go out, and then you know, it starts up every time anyway. Lights here, so you've got this one here which is a dimmer for your dash lights, so that's what that is. And you've got just to the right of that, you've got your main side lights and then main beam over here on the right. So hi. Morning. So jump inside now. We've got the control panel up here over the top. So you've got a main on and off 12 volt switch just here. And so when you turn that off, anything 12 volt related will stop working. So all of your lights, any sort of ignition or anything, all that sort of stuff will just stop. So turn that one on only when you get in the van and want to use it, and then you have access to your lights and bits and pieces. You've then got the pump switch, which basically allows you to draw water through to the taps. So that's cold and that's hot. Once you've done that and the pump runs on for a little while, when you turn it off, the pump should then turn itself off as well when it gets to pressure. So if when you turn either of these taps off, the pump doesn't stop, it can mean two things. It can either mean you've got a bit of a leak somewhere, which isn't the end of the world, but it either means that, or it means that you haven't got enough water in the tank. So at the moment, the tank's nearly full, so that's why you've got really nice pressure there at the tap. So the first thing you want to do when you come into the van, if you want to use your hot water and you want to, you know, do all that sort of stuff, 12 volt on, pump on, and then just do exactly what I just did there. So pull the hot water through. If the hot water doesn't come through nice and clearly like that, without sort of coughing and spluttering, so it's coming through nice and clear right now, that proves to me that the boiler is full. If I try and use the boiler before checking that it's full and it's empty, then basically what will happen is you'll be heating up nothing, and it will just overheat. So you need to make sure that you double check that it's full just by putting the water through like that and double checking that it's coming through nice and clearly. I promise you, you will know about it if it's not coming through clearly, because it will just cough and splutter. You will get a little bit wet. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, that's one of those things. So just make sure that you check that first before lighting your boiler up. The only other things on this particular one, if you had a hookup plugged into the vehicle, you'd have a little light just here where it says charger on. So when you plug a hookup into the van, basically what happens is you get a charger, and that just automatically starts charging up your leisure battery. So when we're turning on the 12 volt power here, we're actually turning on power to all of these things, but via the leisure battery. So if you just turn this on and leave it all on and use it forever without having a hookup plugged in and charging the battery up, then obviously the battery will end up dying after a certain amount of time. Of course, they're built to last, you know, so that you can do it for a little while. So if you were wild camping, you can still use the battery. I'm not hooked up at the moment, but just the longer you use it for, the more, you know, the less power being put back into your battery. So it is important to keep your eye on that. Every once in a while, there's two ways to charge the battery up. If you start the engine and take it for a drive, you've got something called a split relay, which essentially the alternator charges your engine battery under the bonnet, and then from there you've got a split relay, so that then charges or sends power from the engine battery through to the leisure, which is obviously powered all the stuff back here. So driving it charges up your leisure as well as the engine, but also, like I said, putting the hookup cable into the van is probably the more efficient way of doing it. All right, so hookup plugged in, you'll have this little light here. You've also got under this little cover 6 little blade fuses. Now they're all fine at the moment, and I know that because everything in here is working, but if you have a little look on your paperwork for the van, it should show you, or you can quickly look it up online, they're all the same, I think. You can see exactly which numbers do which, and you know what they do. So you just got some fuses under there. It's just a bit more of an old school way of sort of setting the fuses out, and instead of using the sort of newer blade fuses or whatever you might call them. So your fuses are behind there. Pump switch, charger button, or charger light, sorry. If your leisure battery was going flat, you'd have this little red light come on. So that's another way that you can just keep your eye on it. And the last thing is your water level sensor. So if I push this button in, you can see there, well, in fact, it says read, all right? It's not just for water. When you press that button, it will show you whether your battery is good, your leisure battery is good or bad. So if I press it, leisure battery is good, and the water level is full. All right, so that one read button there does the tank level sensor and your battery level sensor. Okay, so that's how you use your control panel. When you come in, turn it on, put your pump switch on if you want to use the water. It's always good practice as well. If, you know, for example, right now I'm not actually using the tap, I'll just switch the pump switch off. All right, and the reason I'm going to do that is because if for whatever reason, because sometimes these pumps are really nice and quiet. If for whatever reason the pump is actually carrying on but you can't hear it, what will happen is if you just leave it to do that for as long as you leave it, it can sometimes burn out and you know, just stop working altogether and you have to replace it. So if you're just not using the taps, just turn the pump switch off just to be sure. Other than that, it's all pretty straightforward stuff. So sticking to sort of like controllers and things like that, we'll just go here, which, you know, just above the worktop just here on the off side of the vehicle. So you've got this Carver little sort of controller here. So Carver is the brand of your boiler. So it's a Carver Rapid or Rapide, however you want to say that. So these are probably the most simple and reliable units and controllers there are. So at the moment it's on because you've got a little green light on up there. And all I've done is press that button there. I'll turn it off. And now there's no flame down there at the boiler and it's off. So literally, that's it. I heard it light up just then. If the battery level is too low for it to work, you get this second light come on. And if the flame doesn't quite light up first go, you get the bottom light come on. So that is it. I'm going to turn that off. And that's that. You've got an aerial point and a 12-volt socket just there. If you wanted a TV, you could sort of mount it here perhaps. Propex heating, again, couldn't really get much easier. Push to the right if you just want a fan blowing. So blows out through this top vent and draws air in through the bottom one. So at the moment there's air coming out through here, but it's just cold air because it's just a fan. Back to the middle, turns it off. One to the left turns the fan back on, but the flame will light up, and after about 30 or 40 seconds you'll have hot air coming out through that top vent. And it's as simple as that. Turn it back off, just like that. If you've had the Propex running for a little while, when you turn it off like that, it will carry on running for a little while. That's just literally just cooling itself down basically, because obviously they get quite hot, and if you turn them off, if they turn their fan off straight away, it would just remain too hot basically. So that's those. Boiler on gas, heating on gas. All right, the heating is only on gas, but the boiler you can use via the electric hookup, which I'll show you how to do in just a minute. So trying to keep a bit of a kind of order going. Just a load of storage under there. Same for these two. Under this oven, you've got some gas isolators, and thankfully somebody has written on there exactly what they do. They have got a little diagram on them that you can sort of work out. If you know what they mean, then it's quite simple, but obviously just got them quite easily written out just there, so you can look at that. So all you have to do, it does show you just there, but you have to look at it this way around. Where they all are now in that position, they're all on. So basically you can just leave them alone and the gas will carry on going to those appliances. If you thought there was a problem with an individual appliance, then you can isolate, you know, them individually. So like if I thought there was a problem with the fridge, I'd look at the one with the ice symbol down here and I would turn it 90 degrees. I'm not going to do it because I've got the fridge lit up at the moment, but I could turn it 90 degrees and then I could switch the gas on and everything else apart from the fridge would then get its gas. All right, so you do not need to do that for any reason other than you think there's a problem or a gas leak or something. Okay, if you do that every time you get out of the van, what you'll find happens is you'll get in, switch the gas on, which again I'll show you how to do in a minute. You'll switch the gas on and then you'll find that nothing will light up and it will take a little while for everything to actually get going again. And that's because when you turn them off from there, the gas only gets from there to there, And then when you try to first light them up again after turning them back on, you have to get from there all the way around the van to the appliance. And it does take a little while, so just bear that in mind. You do not need to do that unless you are worried about one of the appliances. All right, so that's that. You got a 2-burner hob up here. You can see I've just basically made up these little metal parts to hold the back up and make it all nice and pretty. You will need an igniter or a lighter of some description to light any of these up. So you've got the left hand hob, right hand hob, grill, which is under here, and the oven, which is obviously under here. So all 4 of those need an ignition of some sort to light those up. You have got this little prong of metal just here on the side of the burner. It's called a thermocouple, and what that does is it recognises burning gas. Every gas appliance in this entire motorhome has got one of those. It's just easier to show you because you can actually physically see them on this one. So if you lit any of these up, the thermocouple is the thing that allows that gas to carry on coming through. So when it senses that it's hot and that it's burning, it will let it through, no problem. But if you don't turn the dial off and the flame goes out, so if the wind blew it out or somebody blew it out or whatever, the thermocouple will do its job after sort of 10 seconds or so. It will realise there's no more burning gas there anymore, and it would switch itself off from the gas. So it would stop any excess gas coming through. All right, so like I said, every gas appliance, the fridge, the boiler, the heating, everything, they've all got one, and they all work, because that's something that we have to check as part of the hab checks. Right, behind me, we've got the fridge. So it's a 3-way fridge, obviously meaning it works 3 different ways. You've got gas over here on the right, which is all of this section. 240 volts, so you hook up, and then 12 volt when your engine's running. So let me just quickly run you through it. I've got the gas lit up at the moment, and I can prove that because the ignition switch is on and it's not flashing. I can also check by looking down here, and you can actually physically see, I don't know if you can actually see it there very well. Oh, it's a bit dim. But you can actually see a little blue flame inside there. They can be quite hard to actually see. It's easier to see it in real life. So you can either make sure that's not on when it's actually switched on, put your hand over the vent outside like I showed you, or actually physically look down the hole and see the flame. Now obviously the most sort of accurate way would be to actually look down the hole and see the flame, but that's up to you. Right, so I'll switch it off just so I can show you how it works. Okay, I'll leave it off just for a second for it to cool down so I can relight it. So in the meantime, I'll show you how to use it on the other 2. So if you had a hookup plugged into the van, you basically just turn that right up and press that button on. You get a little green, you get a light in there, and it'll just shine up basically. So that is literally as easy as it gets. So press the green button on there if your hookup's plugged in, and that's the way you want to use your fridge. After a few hours or so, the fridge will get cold, and that's it. That really is, that's all there is to it. So that's the fridge. That's the fridge. That's the 240 volt on the fridge. If the engine was running and you were driving, you can use the 12 volt switch at the end, which is the red one. And the only thing I need to point out about the 12 volt switch is that you have to pre-cool the fridge before you actually turn that on and start driving. So if I was going to go away tomorrow morning, I would pre-cool the fridge the night before, probably via the electric hookup switch. So I'll leave a hookup plugged in overnight, because that also means that by the morning when you leave, you'll have a really good charge in the leisure, and that when you get to where you're going, it'll all be nice and, you know, ready to go. But that's my opinion. So I'd pre-cool it either via the electric element here with the hookup plugged in, or I would light it up on gas the night before. And so in the morning, all of your stuff inside the fridge and the fridge itself will be nice and cold, and then you just switch over to 12 volt for when you're driving, and when you get to where you're going, switch it back over to one of the other 2. The reason for that is, I'll just quickly explain, the 12 volt element, the red switch there, the 12 volt one for when you're driving, isn't powerful enough to get the fridge cold on its own. You have to pre-cool it. It's the same on all the fridges, it's not just this one. The 12 volt element is just obviously 12 volts rather than 240 volts. So it's just not nearly powerful enough to get the fridge cold on its own. So like I said, pre-cool it either via the 240 volt or gas. So I'll show you how to light it up. If the gas is switched on, which is inside this little cupboard down here, which applies for everything gas, obviously. You need to turn it on first. Ignition switch, so you can see it flashing and you can also hear it. And then just push in and around to the left on that one. Ignition switch stops straight away. Hold it for a minute, well not a minute, but a few seconds, and then let it go like that. Once in a while, when you let this out like that, the ignition switch will start going again because the flame hasn't quite caught on. And the reason for that is, it's not because it's broken or anything. If that happens, all you have to do is, so let me just see if I can show you what I mean. There you go. So that's, did you see what happened there? So I turned it on and let it out too quickly, and then it didn't actually light up. It's because the thermocouple didn't have a chance to get hot enough to recognize that burning gas. So by turning it on and holding it for a second, it will light up in a sec. There you go, so it's lit up. Holding it for a second and then letting go, the thermocouple recognises that burning gas now and it will stay on. So I'll switch it off. So the little triangle facing the little circle is off, and then turn the ignition off. Really important to turn the ignition off. Every once in a while a customer will accidentally leave that running and then wonder why the leisure battery's gone flat. And obviously it's because this little igniter's just been going constantly in the background. So make sure that you switch that off. But yeah, that's the fridge. It's really nice and simple. Once you get the hang of it, you won't even have to think about it. You'll just do it naturally. But it's all kind of about just trying to remember exactly the sort of the format. So if you struggle to remember how to actually do it, you can actually just leave this left-hand switch on, because it won't do anything until you start the engine anyway. So if you want to leave that on just so that it just changes over straight away, then you can do that, but you don't have to. But yeah, that's it really. So up here, just above the fridge, you've got water heater at the top, which is your water heater on mains electric. You then just got a 240 volt socket, which obviously will only work when your mains is plugged in. So these two here will only work when the mains cable's plugged in. And you've got a little 12 volt socket just down here at the bottom, which will obviously work all the time you've got your on and off switch on the control panel. I've just noticed as well, you've got this little bit here to hold that up with. Didn't realise that. It's a bit easier. Right, so if the mains was plugged in, you could turn that button on there, and the water inside the boiler would just start to heat up via the electric element rather than a gas flame. So you can do that if you want to. It will pull about 3.5 amps, I believe. And so, you know, plenty of room for sort of, well, let me explain what I'm talking about. If you were plugged into a 13 amp pole at a campsite, you need to sort of account for the amount of power that you're using at one time. So if I had this switched on with the electric plugged in and I was on a 13 amp pole, you'd then be left with about 10 amps after that. If I had the fridge on mains, that's about 1 amp. So I'd be left with 9 amps, and then so on. So you just sort of count up how many amps you've got. So basically, if I had this on and the fridge on, and I was plugged into a 13 amp pole, I'd be using 4 amps or 4.5 amps. And so I'll be left with about 8.5 amps or so. All right. I'd then, if I had a hairdryer or a microwave or something like that I wanted to plug in here, I wouldn't be able to use it if it was 10 amps, which I know is a bit ridiculous, but you need to account for the amount that you're using depending on what sort of ampage pole you're plugged into. All right, I hope that makes sense. So if you were plugged into a 6 amp pole, you'd have this on and this on, but not much else really, because you'd end up tripping the power. Okay, so you just need to remember that. Anyway, really important, turn this off where it is now. Turn it off if you're not using it, because if you plug the hook up into the van and this is on and it just comes on without you realizing, if for whatever reason there's no water in the boiler, that will just turn itself on and then just be heating up nothing and doing what I said earlier. So you need to make sure that you only turn that on when you know that you want it on. Okay, but otherwise it's I'm not trying to scare you with that sort of stuff, it's just that The boiler is pretty much the most expensive part of this van, and the bit that you need to sort of take best care of, really. I mean, take care of all of it, obviously, but yeah. On that note, I'll just show you down here. So your leisure battery is in here, nice and easy to get to, so you can get to that by lifting the seat up as well. So that's really nice and easy. And what else have we got? A bit of storage under there. So yeah, it's all pretty nice and straightforward. I'll put that away. So, right, lights and bits and pieces, I've already said that just comes on when your 12 volt on and off is on. The bathroom, so you've got your nice little sort of, well, huge amount of storage in there actually, with the awning winder and things like that. The bathroom is quite important, I need to show you bits and pieces. So you've got your gas locker in here. So turning the bottle on is that little winder at the top there. You need to go anti-clockwise to turn it on, and clockwise around to the right to turn it off. So all the way around to the right to turn it off, and then just do that before every trip. You absolutely should not drive with the gas switched on. Sink and all that sort of stuff is just in here. And if I just show you, maybe I turned the pump off, didn't I? That was going to be embarrassing on the video. Right, pump on and then it obviously works. I want to show you this because it's a classic sort of small motorhome thing to do. You see there's no drain in the sink. All you have to do is just slowly lift it up and it will pour down the back. So basically what happens is you've got a drain down there and a drain down there. And so you pour it down the back and then it just drains away into your waste tank. You've then obviously got the shower, which runs from these 2 points just here, which I'm not going to show you because I will get soaking wet. And the toilet, which is really nice and simple. Push the button down, flush fluid pumps around, open the flap by turning this, and then make sure that you close it back over when you're finished. This part opens up so you can get to there if you want to, which, by the way, from our point of view, is so helpful. That's basically just Autosleeper thinking about us as sort of people that can sort of take things apart and fix stuff, because it's you wouldn't believe how difficult it is to replace these things if you can't get to the underneath of them. So that's really, really helpful. But yeah, so make sure 100% that you turn your gas off before every single trip driving. If you don't turn the gas off before you start driving, I'm not trying to scare you all this stuff, it sounds really negative, but if you had a crash, for example, and any of the, like, I mean, obviously there's so many gas fittings and joints in this whole van. If any of them was to crack or break, or any of the pipes was to burst or whatever, if this gas is still switched on, you'd have 30 millibars of gas pumping out of wherever it is. And by the way, that is a lot of gas. In fact, if it's propane, it's normally more like 37. So just bear that in mind. That's a hell of a lot of gas. If if any of them were to, I mean, I've seen them, split before, not whilst driving or anything like that, but I've seen what happens when they do split. And so if you did have a crash and one of those was to split, if your gas is switched off, nothing will come out of it at all, only the little bit of residue that's already in it. So make sure that you switch it off, which I'm doing now, around to the right clockwise, just until it stops. You haven't got to go crazy tight. Switch it off and then close the locker, and that is it. So you've got a skylight up here, which I've got open at the minute, so I'll just show you that. Just pull that down, literally just pull on it, put that back up away, and then you can undo these and then close these back over, so they meet up really nicely. Lift this up with one hand, put them over it, and then that will drop down. Pull this bit back and this bit, drop that down. Check all the other skylights. So I have got this one open as well. So I'm just basically trying to run through bits and pieces that you would do when sort of getting ready to drive off. So make sure your gas is off, all of the stuff in the bathroom's closed, shut the doors, pump switch off, 12-volt power off. If you've got a hookup lead plugged into it, obviously make sure that you take that out, otherwise it's going to be a real mess. I just thought I'd show you these bits down as well. It is a bit awkward to show you with one hand, but so that's your blind, and then your fly screen, sorry, and then your blind comes up like that. These just undo and then come back in on themselves. Make sure that all of your appliances are off. Obviously, if you've already turned your gas off, then nothing gassy should be working, but just make sure that you do that. Yeah, just basically go around, do all the windows, make sure that you've shut them all over, because if you leave these open whilst you're driving, well, not only will it break off, but I can, I promise you they're not cheap to replace, so please take care of all the windows. Plastic seems to be more expensive than glass, to be honest with you, especially when it's motorhome windows and things, so really important to keep your eye on the windows and just take care of them. But yeah, so the only other thing I want to show you, I've just forgotten until I've realised that I left this one open for a reason, is you've got this little one down here. So that's your RCD and MCBs. So if you plugged a dodgy plug into one of these sockets around here, that's where it will trip from usually. If it doesn't trip there and you're at a campsite or whatever, it may well have tripped outside as well. So just make sure that you double check that. But that's your trip switches just down there. So I think that's about, I can line that up properly. I think that's about all I can show you, to be honest. I don't know if there's much else really around the van anyway. If there's anything you think I've missed out or anything you want us to go through again, just let us know. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you soon to collect your van. Thanks very much.